Sunrise poured softly over the sleepy suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. Rows of neatly trimmed lawns glistened with dew as residents woke to the promise of another bustling workday. Among them was Jonathan Clarke, a 34-year-old accountant, whose precise daily routine rarely deviated from the ordinary. Jonathan's mornings always began in quiet reflection, sipping black coffee while leafing through financial news on his tablet. His cozy two-bedroom house echoed a life meticulously organized. Photographs of his family, celebrating graduations and Christmases, lined the walls, subtly narrating the story of his successes and quiet ambitions. Today felt ordinary but heavy. Jonathan adjusted his dark-rimmed glasses and glanced at the calendar, a circle in red marker around today's date. An important day awaited him at Price & Rydell LLP, where he'd spent 8 loyal years. He'd earned a reputation for integrity, precision, and methodical diligence. Yet lately, office whispers prickled his skin. Rumors drifted quietly, murmurs brushing past cubicles, hastily silenced when he approached. Jonathan was never one to indulge gossip, but the air felt charged, and he couldn't shake a nagging unease. Stepping into his Navy sedan, Jonathan's phone vibrated. It was a message from Sarah Crawford, his longtime colleague and trusted friend at the firm. "We need to talk. Urgent." He frowned. Sarah rarely used words like urgent. He replied swiftly, agreeing to meet in their usual spot, a small cafe near the firm, before work. The cafe was bright, the smell of freshly ground coffee mingling with baked pastries. Jonathan spotted Sarah at their regular corner, tense, her slender fingers nervously twirling a pen. "What's going on?" Jonathan asked, sliding into the seat opposite her. Sarah looked strained, barely meeting his gaze. "There's been chatter." "Serious stuff, Jonathan." "What kind of chatter?" She hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Accounting discrepancies, large sums. They're pointing fingers." Jonathan felt his stomach tighten, sensing something darker beneath her careful words. And your name keeps coming up. "They're preparing something. I don't know exactly, but you're the focus." Jonathan felt the room tilt slightly. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. "Why? I've never done anything remotely." "I know," Sarah interrupted gently, "but rumors don't care about truth, and someone seems to want you out of the way." Jonathan leaned back, trying to piece together who could benefit from tarnishing his reputation. The thought of being set up twisted inside him. He spent years carefully cultivating trust, building his career on a foundation of impeccable honesty. Sarah reached out, briefly touching his hand. "Watch your back. I'll try to dig around, see if I can uncover who's pushing this." He nodded slowly. "Thanks, Sarah." The short drive from the cafe to Price & Rydell LLP felt unbearably long. Jonathan replayed Sarah's warning, anxiety rising with every block. Entering the elegant glass building he had always admired now felt different, foreign, hostile. He couldn't help but feel eyes following him as he walked past reception and up the stairs toward his cubicle. The whispers stopped as he approached, conversations cut off abruptly. Jonathan's pulse quickened. He forced a neutral expression, refusing to show weakness or fear. At his cubicle, everything seemed untouched, yet something felt terribly off, as if someone had invaded his sanctuary. Jonathan booted up his computer and immediately noticed a strange message blinking in his inbox marked as urgent. With a sinking feeling, he clicked open. "Mr. Clarke, please report immediately to the conference room. There is an urgent matter to discuss regarding recent audits." Management. He stared blankly, heart hammering in his chest. His career flashed before him. Years of meticulous dedication, staying late to ensure every number balanced, every ledger precise. A wave of anger and disbelief surged. Someone intended to frame him, stain his record, and tarnish everything he had carefully built. Minutes later, standing in front of the closed doors of the firm's conference room, Jonathan braced himself. Inside waited his supervisors, senior partners, and likely representatives from human resources. The room felt cold even before he stepped inside, but he squared his shoulders and opened the door. They were seated around the long, polished mahogany table, faces solemn, unreadable. At the head sat Mr. Donald Rydell, co-founder of the firm, whose presence here signaled the gravity of the meeting. "Please, have a seat, Jonathan," Rydell instructed calmly, motioning toward the empty chair directly across from him. Jonathan sat slowly, glancing around at familiar faces that suddenly seemed distant, cold. "I understand there is an issue?" he asked steadily, holding Rydell's gaze. Rydell nodded, pulling out a thick folder, heavy with accusation. Indeed, Mr. Clarke, significant discrepancies have been uncovered in client accounts. Funds systematically transferred out over months. All evidence, he paused deliberately, his eyes narrowing slightly, appears to point directly to you. Jonathan's hands tightened imperceptibly beneath the table. That's impossible. Every transaction I make is thoroughly documented. Rydell sighed heavily. Jonathan, these funds were routed through your personal access codes, logs, timestamps, even digital fingerprints. It is quite comprehensive. Jonathan felt his breath quicken, confusion mingling with panic. I did not do this, he insisted firmly. Someone else must have accessed my codes. These are serious allegations, Rydell continued, ignoring his protest. Given the magnitude, the firm has no choice but to suspend your employment pending further investigation. Jonathan sat rigid, anger boiling beneath his composed exterior. The injustice of it all stung sharply, yet he knew emotional outbursts would only solidify their suspicions. I understand the severity, Jonathan managed evenly, controlling the tremor in his voice. But I assure you, I am innocent. There must be some evidence overlooked, something that clears my name. Rydell's expression softened slightly. If there's any such evidence, Jonathan, I hope you find it quickly. For now, security will escort you out. I'm truly sorry. Jonathan rose stiffly, humiliation burning his cheeks as a security guard discreetly approached. Colleagues stared discreetly through glass walls, pretending not to notice his escorted departure. Once outside, Jonathan stood numb on the sidewalk. The city blurred around him, faces passing without notice. This wasn't merely a fight for his job. It was a battle for his dignity, his integrity, and his very identity. He squared his shoulders, pulling out his phone. Sarah answered immediately, worry thick in her voice. Sarah, he spoke firmly, determination edging his tone. We're finding out who's behind this. Today. He felt the ground steady beneath him as he took the first purposeful step away from the firm. Jonathan Clarke was innocent, and he would prove it, no matter the cost. Jonathan stepped into the bright midday sunlight, but the world around him felt darker than ever. Each passing car, every hurried pedestrian, seemed oblivious to the turmoil churning inside him. He turned and stared up at the glass facade of Price & Rydell LLP, reflecting the city's skyline with cold detachment. The firm had been his second home, now suddenly hostile and distant. He clenched his fists briefly, feeling a helpless rage bubbling beneath his calm exterior. His career, meticulously crafted through long hours, sleepless nights, and relentless dedication, was crumbling before his eyes, replaced by suspicion and humiliation. He knew he couldn't afford to wallow. He needed answers, and quickly. Sarah arrived moments later, visibly shaken, clutching a thick leather-bound notebook. They quickly moved to a quiet bench nearby, away from prying eyes. I can't believe this, she whispered urgently. They're already moving fast. Emails are flying, meetings called behind closed doors. Your case is everywhere. Jonathan took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. Someone set me up. We need to understand who benefits from this mess. Sarah opened her notebook, flipping hastily through the pages. She stopped abruptly, pointing to several scribbled lines. I started tracing the suspicious transactions the moment I heard the rumors. Every single discrepancy leads back to two specific accounts: Hartwell Dynamics and Maplewood Holdings. Jonathan's brow furrowed. Both are relatively small accounts. Why would anyone target them specifically? Sarah hesitated briefly, glancing around nervously before lowering her voice further. They're small, yes, but both accounts recently had new managers assigned, managers personally appointed by Rydell. Jonathan leaned back, eyes narrowing as he processed the implication. Rydell? You're suggesting Donald Rydell himself could be involved in this? Or at least someone close to him, Sarah said carefully. Think about it. Who else has enough authority to manipulate internal systems, falsify entries, and ensure no one else notices? Whoever it is, they're banking on framing someone trustworthy and meticulous, someone like you, to deflect suspicion. Jonathan exhaled sharply. But what's the motive? Money alone seems too simplistic. Rydell has more wealth than he could possibly spend. Sarah nodded slowly, troubled. Maybe it isn't money at all. Maybe you're just the scapegoat, collateral damage in something bigger, something personal. Jonathan stared out across the street, mind racing through interactions and conversations, seeking something, anything, that hinted at hidden animosities or secret motives. His relationship with Rydell had always been professional, respectful, if distant. But did he truly know what lay beneath the polished veneer of professionalism? "All right," Jonathan finally said. "First, I need access to security footage from the dates and times these transactions occurred. If I can prove I wasn't physically or digitally accessing the system during those moments, they'll have to acknowledge the possibility of sabotage." Sarah glanced anxiously back toward the building. "That footage is tightly controlled. Only security and upper management have access." Jonathan considered this carefully. "Then we'll need someone from security on our side. Anyone sympathetic who might help?" Sarah's eyes brightened slightly. "Mark Foster. You remember him, right?" Jonathan recalled Mark, a quiet security supervisor with whom he had exchanged polite greetings for years. "Will he take the risk?" Sarah hesitated briefly. His son was wrongly accused of theft at his college last year, almost expelled before evidence cleared him. He's still bitter about the system nearly ruining his son's life. I think he'll sympathize. Jonathan nodded decisively. "Then let's talk to him. We have no time to lose." The afternoon stretched endlessly as they waited for Mark Foster's shift to end. Jonathan sat in his car, parked discreetly across the street, his mind spinning. He struggled to grasp the reality of what was happening. His career and future hinged on uncovering the truth quickly. He knew every passing hour increased the likelihood of his reputation being irreparably damaged. At exactly 6:30, Mark stepped out of the building. Jonathan quickly exited the car, intercepting him on the sidewalk. Mark seemed startled but not unfriendly. He took a cautious glance around before nodding toward a nearby alley, away from curious eyes. "What's going on, Jonathan?" Mark asked quietly once they were hidden from view. "Rumors say you've been suspended. People whispering about fraud." Jonathan's voice trembled slightly, despite his best effort. "Mark, someone is framing me. They've altered logs to show my ID linked to fraudulent transfers. But if I can access security footage from those times, I can prove I wasn't involved." Mark's brow creased deeply. "You realize what you're asking? That's highly confidential material. Releasing it could cost me my job. Or worse." Jonathan met Mark's gaze firmly. "I know. But this isn't just about me. Whoever's behind this corruption might implicate others too. If they succeed in scapegoating me, they'll believe they can get away with anything." Mark hesitated, visibly conflicted. His mind seemed to drift momentarily, likely recalling his son's own injustice. Finally he sighed, resignation mingling with resolve in his voice. "All right, I'll help. But we must be quick and careful. Meet me tonight around 10, near the loading dock. I'll slip you copies of the footage. But Jonathan," Mark paused, his voice suddenly grave, "be prepared for whatever you might find. Truth is rarely simple." Jonathan grasped Mark's hand gratefully. "I owe you more than I can ever repay." Mark offered a small, weary smile. "Just clear your name." Hours dragged as Jonathan paced his living room, waiting restlessly for the appointed hour. Questions swirled relentlessly. Could Rydell really be orchestrating this deception? Or was someone else pulling strings behind the scenes, a puppeteer whose identity remained hidden? Night fell, casting shadows that matched the uncertainty gripping him. When 10 o'clock finally approached, Jonathan's nerves buzzed with tension. He drove swiftly through empty streets toward the building, heart pounding steadily faster. True to his word, Mark appeared from the shadows near the loading dock, carrying a small flash drive. "Everything you need is here," Mark whispered urgently, pressing it into Jonathan's palm. "Be careful. Whatever you discover, act fast. They'll soon realize this footage is missing." Jonathan nodded, his gratitude evident. "Thank you, Mark." Returning home, Jonathan connected the flash drive immediately. Video footage from security cameras flooded his computer screen, timestamps aligning precisely with the alleged fraudulent activities. He meticulously reviewed each moment, noting every detail. Who entered and exited the accounting area, the precise times. Hours passed, eyes burning from exhaustion, until finally, at 2:37 a.m., Jonathan froze. On the grainy footage was a figure, familiar yet obscured slightly by shadow, entering Jonathan's cubicle, typing quickly, then disappearing moments later. Jonathan's blood turned cold. He rewound the footage, adjusting brightness and contrast, enhancing the image carefully. Gradually, the figure's identity sharpened into unmistakable clarity. He felt his stomach churn violently, heart sinking. The face on the screen belonged to Sarah Crawford. Jonathan stared in disbelief, shock giving way to painful realization. His closest ally, the person he trusted implicitly, had betrayed him. Questions surged angrily. Why Sarah? Had she acted alone or was she part of something larger? Sleep eluded him as dawn broke, casting pale light across his room. Jonathan felt utterly isolated, unsure whom to trust. Yet now, armed with irrefutable evidence of sabotage, he prepared himself for a confrontation that would determine not only his future, but perhaps his very identity. The truth awaited him. Whatever it brought, Jonathan Clarke would not shy from it. Morning arrived cold and bleak, sunlight filtering through gray clouds that mirrored Jonathan's mood. He hadn't slept, the discovery of Sarah Crawford's betrayal still fresh and searing in his heart. Hours of footage replayed endlessly in his mind. The image of Sarah slipping silently into his workspace, her delicate fingers flying across the keyboard, leaving behind digital evidence that had led directly to his ruin. Jonathan stood at his kitchen window, coffee untouched, mind wrestling with disbelief. He tried desperately to rationalize her betrayal, hoping there might be some misunderstanding or manipulation, something, anything, to lessen the sting. But the evidence was undeniable, brutally clear. Sarah had knowingly sabotaged him. What troubled him more than her actions was her motive. Sarah had always been dependable, dedicated, a trusted ally in the often cutthroat world of accounting. He had mentored her years ago when she first joined the firm, their relationship built on mutual respect and camaraderie. What had driven her to betray that bond? His phone buzzed suddenly, startling him from contemplation. Jonathan glanced down warily. It was Sarah herself. Anger surged, but he took a measured breath before answering, determined not to tip his hand yet. "Jonathan," Sarah's voice crackled through, unusually strained. "Did Mark get you this footage?" He paused, trying to steady his voice. "Yes, it was enlightening." She hesitated, sensing his guarded tone. "Did you find something useful?" Jonathan clenched his jaw tightly, struggling against rising fury. He chose his words carefully, masking suspicion with forced neutrality. "Yes, I did. Something unexpected." There was silence, then a small sigh from Sarah. "We need to talk. There's more going on than you know." Jonathan's pulse quickened at her cryptic statement. Was this another deception, another layer of manipulation designed to further entrap him? "Meet me in 30 minutes, Sarah said quickly. "Lincoln Park, the bench by the fountain. I'll explain everything." Jonathan reluctantly agreed, hanging up abruptly. He knew it might be a trap or another calculated deception, but he had no choice. Answers lay with Sarah, and perhaps his redemption. He dressed quickly, pulling on his jacket and exiting into the chill morning air. Driving through the waking city, Jonathan's thoughts swirled relentlessly. Trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered, almost impossible to rebuild once broken. Could Sarah possibly say anything to justify her betrayal? Lincoln Park was nearly empty at this early hour, the benches covered in dew, trees rustling softly in the morning breeze. Sarah was already waiting, sitting stiffly, eyes darting nervously around as he approached. She looked different, more worn, shadows beneath her eyes betraying sleepless nights. She rose unsteadily as Jonathan approached, her voice quivering slightly as she spoke. "Jonathan, thank you for coming." His response was sharp, direct. "Tell me why, Sarah. Why betray me?" She visibly recoiled at his bluntness, guilt flashing across her face. Her voice lowered, shaky but urgent. "You have every right to hate me. I deserve it. But please listen. It's far more complicated than you think." Jonathan remained stiff, watching her carefully. "Explain. Quickly." Sarah glanced around once more, lowering her voice to barely above a whisper. "I didn't have a choice. They made me do it." Jonathan frowned, skepticism evident. "Who made you?" Sarah hesitated briefly, fear creeping into her eyes. "It was Donald Rydell and someone else. Someone much more dangerous." Jonathan felt cold dread seep into him. "Who?" She lowered her voice further, desperation clear. "Michael Stanton." Jonathan's heart sank at the mention of Michael Stanton, Rydell's ambitious, ruthless partner at the firm. Stanton had always been shrouded in rumors. Powerful connections, ruthless tactics, and whispered ties to organized crime. His charm masked an iron resolve that few dared challenge. Sarah continued quickly, panic edging her voice. "They have leverage against me, against my family. Stanton found out about my brother's gambling debts. He owes money to dangerous people, Jonathan. Stanton offered to clear those debts if I helped him frame you." Jonathan's anger softened slightly, empathy flickering alongside lingering suspicion. "You should have come to me. We could have faced this together. Sarah shook her head violently. I wanted to, believe me. But Stanton threatened worse if I involved anyone else. He's ruthless. He said if I refused, he'd destroy us both. Jonathan sat slowly beside her, processing this revelation. Michael Stanton's involvement complicated everything. Stanton wasn't someone who acted without deeper motives. Jonathan realized his framing wasn't merely about scapegoating. It was likely tied to something deeper within the firm, perhaps hidden financial crimes or a power struggle at the highest levels. Sarah took a ragged breath, tears streaming down her cheeks now. I hate myself for what I've done, Jonathan. You don't deserve this. But Stanton controls everything. The accounts, the security, even certain members of law enforcement. He ensured the evidence pointed directly at you. If you fight, he'll come at you even harder. Jonathan clenched his fists tightly, refusing to succumb to despair. We can't let him get away with this, Sarah. I have footage showing your involvement, but I can protect you if we stand together. She shook her head, fear brightening her eyes. It's not enough. Stanton anticipated you'd find footage eventually. He'll have already buried any evidence that implicates him or Rydell. Jonathan thought carefully, feeling trapped. Stanton's reach within Price and Rydell was extensive, his connections influential. Direct confrontation seemed impossible without additional evidence. Sarah leaned closer, urgency overriding her fear momentarily. There might be something else. One of Stanton's personal assistants, Jessica Lang, resigned abruptly last month. Rumor has it she discovered something about his illegal dealings. If we can find her, maybe she'll help. Jonathan considered this cautiously. Where is Jessica now? Sarah shook her head helplessly. She vanished completely. Deleted social media, phone disconnected. Stanton probably intimidated her into silence, or worse. Jonathan stood abruptly, determination hardening his expression. Then we find her. She might be our only hope of proving what Stanton's doing. Sarah stood slowly, her face pale. Jonathan, you must be careful. Stanton knows you're resilient, stubborn even. If he senses you're onto Jessica, he'll move swiftly. He won't hesitate to destroy anyone in his path. Jonathan nodded gravely, accepting the risk. Then we move faster. Stanton is counting on me giving up. That won't happen. Sarah managed a faint, relieved smile. Despite everything, you're still stronger than he realizes. Jonathan felt resolve solidifying within him, clearer than ever. This isn't just about clearing my name anymore. It's about uncovering corruption and stopping Stanton before he ruins more lives. They parted cautiously, each knowing the stakes had escalated dangerously. Jonathan left Lincoln Park feeling a complex mix of hope and unease. Betrayal still stung deeply, yet he understood Sarah's impossible dilemma. Driving away, Jonathan mentally outlined his next steps. Finding Jessica Lang was essential. She held keys to Stanton's secrets, secrets powerful enough perhaps to expose his crimes. But tracking her down wouldn't be easy. Jessica had gone to great lengths to vanish, hiding from a man who wielded fear and power with ruthless efficiency. Jonathan knew he couldn't search openly. Stanton would anticipate that, watching his every move closely now. Instead, he would need to approach indirectly, utilizing contacts, allies beyond the firm's influence. His mind raced, considering who might help discreetly. Journalists, private investigators, perhaps old acquaintances outside corporate circles. Despite everything, the betrayal, threats, isolation, Jonathan felt a surprising clarity now. He had faced betrayal from someone trusted, exposed hidden corruption, and glimpsed the ruthless depths of power. Yet he remained unbroken, determined to fight back. Jonathan Clarke knew his life hung precariously in balance, the threat looming closer than ever. But he was ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Michael Stanton had underestimated him once. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Jonathan returned home, restless and consumed with urgency. The betrayal he'd faced had changed him profoundly. Trust was shattered, friendships fractured, but his resolve had strengthened. Michael Stanton's shadow loomed large, and uncovering the truth hinged entirely on finding Jessica Lang, Stanton's former personal assistant. He poured himself a strong cup of coffee, determined to remain alert despite exhaustion gnawing at him. Sitting at his kitchen table, he began methodically drafting a plan. Jessica Lang had managed to disappear, leaving no digital footprint, a deliberate effort that signaled both intelligence and desperation. Jonathan had to think carefully. If Jessica had reason to fear Stanton, she would hide with precision and care. Jonathan started by researching everything available online, attempting to piece together Jessica's personal life before her disappearance. He spent hours combing through old social media profiles, photos, and postings archived by mutual contacts. Her online persona was polished and professional, revealing little beyond her job. Still, subtle clues emerged upon careful inspection. Jessica's profile indicated she'd grown up in Springfield, Illinois, a small detail she had casually mentioned in posts years earlier. Jonathan knew someone seeking refuge often returned to familiar places, drawing comfort from known surroundings. Springfield was the first promising lead, a place where Jessica might blend in unnoticed. Jonathan noted her former schools and local connections, building a list of potential acquaintances who might discreetly shelter her. Carefully, he reached out under the guise of an old acquaintance, using a fabricated but plausible identity, hoping someone would reveal Jessica's whereabouts. Hours passed fruitlessly. Responses trickled back polite but unhelpful, wary of strangers asking questions. Just as discouragement began seeping in, Jonathan received a brief but intriguing reply from a former classmate named Emily Walters. Jessica left Springfield years ago, but I heard she recently contacted her old roommate, Laura Bennett. Maybe she can help. Jonathan quickly found Laura Bennett's profile. She was a nurse at a small clinic in Springfield, her social media presence minimal but sincere. He knew he had to proceed carefully. A wrong approach could scare Jessica deeper into hiding or alert Stanton's network. Jonathan considered his options. Direct contact seemed too risky, but time was critical. Deciding on a bold yet subtle approach, Jonathan prepared to drive to Springfield himself, knowing face-to-face interaction might persuade Laura more effectively. Stanton likely had eyes everywhere digitally, but in-person contact in a quiet town was safer. As night fell, Jonathan packed essentials, taking the security footage flash drive and any documentation he might need. He paused briefly at the threshold, reflecting on the surreal nature of his journey. Only days ago, he had been an established accountant. Now he felt like a fugitive, forced into a clandestine search for the truth. Driving through the darkness towards Springfield, Jonathan's thoughts turned introspective. He replayed his years at Price and Rydell LLP, searching for overlooked warnings, subtle signs he might have missed regarding Stanton's true character. His memories of Stanton were clear. Impeccably dressed, charismatic, a leader with unquestionable authority. Yet beneath that polished veneer was a man capable of ruthless manipulation and criminality. Jonathan realized Stanton's motives likely went beyond mere greed. Power and control were his real goals, attained through intimidation and carefully orchestrated deception. Arriving in Springfield by dawn, Jonathan checked into a modest motel, careful not to attract unnecessary attention. After resting briefly, he prepared to meet Laura Bennett, rehearsing his approach meticulously. She represented his best chance at finding Jessica, and by extension, uncovering Stanton's dark secrets. At precisely noon, Jonathan approached the clinic, a modest building tucked discreetly among leafy suburban streets. The waiting room buzzed quietly with activity, elderly patients thumbing through worn magazines. Jonathan approached the front desk with practiced calm. "I'm here to see Laura Bennett," he said politely. "I have some urgent personal information regarding her friend, Jessica Lang." The receptionist hesitated briefly, sensing the seriousness in Jonathan's tone. "Please wait here. I'll see if she's available." Minutes passed slowly, tension building quietly within Jonathan. Finally, Laura appeared, mid-30s, slender, blonde hair pulled back neatly, eyes sharp and wary. "Who are you?" she asked quietly, guiding him away from the lobby into a secluded hallway. "My name is Jonathan Clarke. Jessica might have mentioned me. I worked at Price and Rydell. I'm looking for her, urgently." Laura's eyes widened briefly with recognition. "Jessica warned me someone might come, but why should I trust you?" Jonathan hesitated briefly, then spoke honestly. "Jessica knows something critical about Michael Stanton, something dangerous. Stanton framed me, and now Jessica's life might be at risk too. I'm not here to harm her. I need her help to expose him." Laura studied Jonathan closely, considering carefully. "Jessica is terrified, Mr. Clarke. She risked everything by running. Why would she trust you now?" Jonathan reached into his pocket slowly, pulling out the flash drive. "Because Jessica has information that could save lives, including her own. Stanton won't stop hunting until he silences her. I can help protect her, but only if I can speak to her directly." Laura seemed torn between caution and concern, then finally sighed deeply. "Come back tonight. I'll contact Jessica first. If she agrees, I'll arrange a meeting. But if you're lying—" Jonathan shook his head firmly. "I'm not. Jessica deserves safety, and I need justice." Returning to his motel, Jonathan waited anxiously. Hours passed slowly, filled with tense anticipation. At last, just after sunset, a message arrived from Laura. Jessica will meet you tonight, 9 p.m. sharp, at Centennial Park near the old gazebo. Come alone. Jonathan's heart pounded sharply at the news, anxiety blending with cautious hope. This meeting could change everything, but he remained aware of the risks involved. Stanton's reach was formidable. Any slip-up could prove catastrophic. As night enveloped Springfield, Jonathan carefully approached Centennial Park, nerves taut, senses heightened. The park was dimly lit, shadows dancing beneath the pale glow of scattered lampposts. Jonathan saw the gazebo, silhouetted against darkness, and approached slowly. Jessica emerged from behind the gazebo suddenly, pale, visibly thinner, eyes filled with fearful defiance. She stared warily at Jonathan, hands trembling slightly. "Jessica," Jonathan spoke calmly, stopping several feet away to reassure her. "Thank you for meeting me." She studied him silently, finally speaking cautiously. "Laura trusts you, but Stanton is relentless. He destroyed my life because I discovered his secrets." Jonathan nodded grimly. "Then we must act now. Tell me everything." Jessica took a shaky breath, visibly terrified but determined. "Stanton has been systematically funneling millions through shell corporations, laundering funds connected to organized crime. He uses firm resources, blackmail, intimidation, even violence to ensure silence. I found proof, hidden documents on his private servers." Jonathan felt cold realization seep through him. Stanton's corruption was deeper and more sinister than imagined. "Do you still have that proof?" Jessica hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Encrypted, hidden. Stanton believes I destroyed it, but I kept copies. If you help me stay safe, I'll give it to you." Jonathan felt relief mingling with urgency. Jessica held the key, proof powerful enough to expose Stanton permanently. But their situation remained precarious. Stanton would act swiftly once aware of their meeting. "Jessica," Jonathan spoke firmly, "you must come with me. We'll release the evidence publicly and end this nightmare." Jessica hesitated, conflicted. Then finally, desperation overcame her caution. "All right, Jonathan, I'll trust you. Let's stop Stanton before it's too late." They quickly left the park, urgency pressing them forward into the uncertain night. Danger loomed nearer now. But for the first time, Jonathan saw a path to justice, narrow and perilous, but finally clear. Jonathan and Jessica drove through the night, keeping to empty roads and quiet back streets. The air between them felt heavy. Both shared the intense silence of people whose lives now depended entirely on trust built from desperation. Jessica, sitting beside Jonathan in the dim car interior, clutched a small, worn leather bag containing the encrypted evidence against Michael Stanton. She glanced nervously into the side mirrors every few minutes, her paranoia contagious. Jonathan finally broke the silence as they left Springfield behind. "We can't go back to Columbus. Not yet. Stanton will anticipate that. Do you have somewhere safe, somewhere nobody else would suspect?" Jessica paused, considering carefully. "There's a small cabin owned by my family near Starved Rock, outside Utica. No one's been there in years. It's remote, hidden. Stanton couldn't know about it." "Good," Jonathan replied, determination settling over him. "We'll go there, lay low, and prepare our next move." The highway stretched endlessly before them, headlights slicing through darkness that felt symbolic. Each mile took them further from immediate danger, but closer to inevitable confrontation. Jonathan's mind raced. Stanton's corruption ran deeper than he'd imagined, woven intricately into Price and Rydell's foundations. Exposing it would require strategic precision. One misstep could be disastrous. Jessica broke the silence again, her voice quiet yet firm. "Jonathan, how did he frame you exactly?" Jonathan recounted the scheme meticulously, how transactions appeared under his ID, each meticulously planted. Jessica listened intently, nodding slowly. "It matches Stanton's methods," she confirmed bitterly. "He targets those he considers threats, people smart enough to expose him." Jonathan considered her words carefully. "But why me? I wasn't investigating him. I had no idea." Jessica sighed heavily. "You might not have known, but Stanton watches everyone closely. You were meticulous, respected, trusted. That alone made you dangerous. Stanton needed someone credible to take the fall, divert suspicion. You were a perfect target." Anger flashed briefly through Jonathan, mingled with bitter regret at being chosen precisely because of his integrity. Stanton had weaponized the very qualities Jonathan prided himself on most. It felt cruelly ironic. Hours later, as dawn illuminated pale skies streaked with gold, they approached Utica. The area was densely wooded, rural, untouched by urban development, a perfect sanctuary. Jessica guided Jonathan down winding gravel roads, increasingly isolated, until they finally reached a narrow path nearly hidden by thick foliage. "Stop here," Jessica whispered, her voice tight. "We'll have to walk from here. The cabin's deeper in." Jonathan parked the car discreetly behind thick brush. Together they moved quietly through dense trees, careful not to disturb branches excessively, paranoia sharpening every sense. After several minutes, a small rustic cabin appeared, a modest structure, paint peeling gently, nestled within dense woods. Once inside, Jonathan secured the door, scanning quickly for any sign of intrusion. Dust-coated surfaces, no footprints, no disturbances. Relief momentarily softened tension. They seemed safe, for now. Jessica carefully opened her leather bag, revealing a small external hard drive. She handed it to Jonathan, trust solidifying in her eyes. This drive contains Stanton's encrypted files, shell corporations, offshore accounts, financial ledgers detailing his illegal activities, even communications with criminal contacts. Enough to bring down not only Stanton, but possibly Rydell himself. Jonathan studied the drive solemnly. "We need someone reliable to decrypt and safely handle this information. Stanton's connections mean we can't simply hand it over to law enforcement blindly." Jessica nodded thoughtfully. "There's a journalist, Kevin Hayes. He once contacted me anonymously when rumors started circulating about Stanton. He wanted proof but couldn't find it. If we give him this evidence, he can expose everything publicly." Jonathan considered carefully. Hayes was well known, a fearless investigative reporter whose relentless pursuit of truth had already brought down corrupt officials. If anyone could handle Stanton's corruption effectively, it was him. "Contact him," Jonathan finally agreed. "But be cautious. Stanton's reach is extensive." Jessica nodded gravely. Using a prepaid phone she'd carefully hidden, she dialed a number memorized months earlier, heart pounding nervously. The call connected swiftly. Jessica spoke clearly yet quietly. "Kevin Hayes, this is Jessica Lang. I have what you're looking for." The pause on the other end was brief, cautious. "Jessica, you're in serious danger. Where are you?" Jessica hesitated briefly, glancing anxiously at Jonathan, then responded cautiously. "Safe for now, but not for long. I have evidence against Michael Stanton, powerful enough to stop him, but I need help." Another pause, shorter this time. "I'm listening, but be careful. You're not paranoid. Stanton's men have been watching me closely." Jessica glanced nervously around the cabin instinctively. "Can you meet us discreetly?" "Give me an hour," Hayes replied quickly. "I'll come alone. Trust no one else." Jonathan provided a location, a nearby diner far enough away to offer plausible deniability, yet close enough for a swift escape. Jessica hung up, anxiety sharp in her eyes. They waited tensely, each minute stretching endlessly. Finally, at the appointed time, Jonathan carefully concealed the drive under his jacket. Jessica glanced at him nervously but nodded resolutely, understanding that the next step was crucial. Arriving at the diner, they chose a secluded booth in the back, each scanning nervously for any suspicious activity. Minutes later, Kevin Hayes appeared, middle-aged, intense eyes scanning swiftly before joining them discreetly. "Jonathan Clarke," Jonathan introduced himself quietly. "Former accountant, framed by Stanton." Hayes nodded solemnly. "I've read about your case. Stanton's fingerprints were all over it, though proving that is another matter entirely." Jonathan carefully slid the hard drive across the table. "Here's your proof. Encrypted files detailing Stanton's criminal activities. Jessica risked everything to get it." Hayes discreetly pocketed the drive, expression grim yet hopeful. "If this is legitimate, Stanton's finished. But it'll take time, hours, maybe days, to decrypt fully." "Can we trust your contacts?" Jonathan asked urgently. Hayes hesitated briefly. "Yes, I've got reliable experts unaffiliated with Stanton's reach. But Stanton won't wait. He'll move fast once he realizes what we have." Jessica spoke softly yet urgently. "Then we'll hide until you publish the evidence. Stanton must believe we're too frightened to act openly." Hayes nodded approvingly. "Good strategy, but don't underestimate him. Stanton is ruthless. Lay low until I publish the first article exposing him. After that, he'll be fighting to save himself, not chasing you. Jonathan extended a firm handshake. Thank you. This means more than you realize. Hayes stood quickly, scanning the diner cautiously once more. I'll contact you through secure means. Stay hidden, stay alive. As Hayes left swiftly, Jonathan and Jessica exchanged cautious hope. But relief was short-lived. Jonathan's phone buzzed urgently. The message chilled him instantly, heart hammering. I know where you are. Your move was predictable, Jonathan. You've endangered Jessica now, too. Stanton! Fear flashed across Jessica's face as Jonathan quickly rose, voice tight with controlled urgency. He's found us. We need to move now. They raced back toward the hidden cabin, panic fueling adrenaline. Jonathan's mind reeled. Stanton had anticipated every step. But Jonathan refused defeat, refused to surrender to fear. Stanton's arrogance had always been his greatest weakness. Perhaps this threat could be turned to their advantage, exposing his hand prematurely. Back at the cabin, Jonathan swiftly gathered essentials. Stanton expects panic. We'll use that. Misdirect him. Leave subtle clues sending his men away from our real path. Jessica watched him carefully, tension evident but trusting his judgment implicitly now. Where do we actually go? Jonathan paused briefly, thinking clearly despite pressure. Chicago. It's crowded, anonymous, safer for hiding openly. Stanton won't expect audacity. Jessica nodded determinedly. They set traps, false notes, deliberate hints designed to mislead Stanton's pursuit, then slipped quietly into the forest, urgency pushing them forward toward uncertainty, but also toward hope. The chase had intensified, the stakes higher than ever. Stanton's threat remained powerful, deadly, but Jonathan felt newfound resilience, strengthened by Justice's promise. Together, they disappeared into shadows, fighting fiercely to reclaim their lives. Jonathan and Jessica arrived in Chicago under the cloak of night, the city's skyline glittering against a backdrop of stars and drifting clouds. The journey had been tense, filled with anxious glances over their shoulders and constant vigilance for signs they were followed. Stanton's ominous message haunted Jonathan, reminding him that their enemy anticipated every move. Yet the bustling anonymity of Chicago offered a fragile sense of protection. They settled into a modest hotel on the edge of downtown, anonymous enough to disappear into, busy enough to mask their presence. Jonathan paid in cash, wary of leaving any digital trace that Stanton might exploit. Inside the hotel room, both sank into chairs, exhausted yet unable to rest. The tension had carved itself deep into their expressions, shadows dark beneath tired eyes. Jonathan paced restlessly, his mind swirling. We can't rely solely on Kevin Hayes. Stanton's resources run deep. He'll soon figure out Hayes is helping us. We need an alternative strategy. Jessica nodded slowly, her expression troubled. If Stanton thinks we're in hiding, he'll likely shift his focus entirely to Hayes. Perhaps we should use that distraction, investigate Stanton's network ourselves. Jonathan paused thoughtfully. Jessica's idea held merit. Active pursuit could disrupt Stanton's calculated strategy, forcing him into mistakes. But it carried enormous risk. One misstep would expose them completely. Jessica, if we do that, we're gambling with our lives, Jonathan warned quietly. She met his gaze steadily. Aren't we all ready? Stanton will destroy us if he gets the chance. I'd rather go down fighting than live in constant fear. Jonathan admired her resilience, understanding fully the gravity of her decision. All right then, we move carefully. First, we need more resources. Trusted allies outside Stanton's reach. Jessica agreed cautiously. Do you know anyone in Chicago trustworthy enough? Jonathan's thoughts drifted briefly, recalling an old friend from university, Marcus Wright. Marcus had once pursued a career in accounting before veering sharply into cybersecurity and ethical hacking, ultimately founding a respected cybersecurity consultancy in Chicago. Marcus had always operated with firm principles, unwavering integrity, a man Jonathan felt could be relied upon now. Marcus Wright, Jonathan finally answered, determination clear in his voice. He's someone Stanton wouldn't easily predict. Marcus has no known connection to Price and Rydell, making him safe and reliable. Jessica's expression shifted toward cautious optimism. Then let's find him quickly. Early the following morning, Jonathan discreetly made contact with Marcus's office, leaving an ambiguous but urgent message. Within hours, Marcus returned the call, immediately sensing Jonathan's gravity. Jonathan Clarke? Marcus's voice was deep, steady, carrying warmth despite evident caution. Long time. Your message sounded urgent. Are you in trouble? Jonathan hesitated only briefly. More than you know, Marcus. I've been framed by powerful people. Jessica Lang, my companion here, and I have evidence exposing high-level corruption. But we need technical assistance and security. Marcus was silent briefly, processing carefully. This sounds serious. Can you meet me securely? Jonathan quickly agreed, arranging a discreet meeting at Marcus's office downtown, an environment Marcus fully controlled, shielded from Stanton's eyes. The day passed slowly, tension building relentlessly. At precisely 6 in the evening, Jonathan and Jessica arrived at Marcus's building, a sleek modern structure downtown. Marcus met them personally, his imposing stature softened by an open, reassuring expression. Inside his secure office, Marcus immediately secured all digital devices, employing sophisticated electronic countermeasures designed specifically to thwart surveillance. All right, Marcus began calmly, turning to Jonathan and Jessica. Tell me everything, from the beginning. Jonathan outlined their ordeal meticulously. Stanton's scheme, Jessica's discovery of illegal transactions, the encrypted evidence, Kevin Hayes' involvement, Stanton's threats. Marcus listened intently, taking careful notes, eyes sharp with analytical precision. When Jonathan finished, Marcus leaned back thoughtfully, his gaze intense. Stanton's operation seems well structured, typical of corporate criminals who leverage their resources for maximum control. Jessica's encrypted drive was a crucial first step, but decryption and public exposure alone won't stop Stanton. He'll counterattack aggressively, attempting to discredit or eliminate everyone involved. Jessica's face paled slightly. Then how do we beat him? Marcus's response was direct, measured. We counter Stanton with strategic leaks, gradually eroding his credibility, while simultaneously protecting your identities. He'll suspect you immediately, but suspicion isn't proof. We must dismantle his credibility incrementally, layer by layer. Jonathan understood Marcus's tactic. Gradual exposure would weaken Stanton's defenses, forcing errors from desperation or arrogance. It was a careful game, requiring patience and precision. Marcus continued, decisive now. We start immediately. My team will decrypt your evidence securely, segmenting key findings for controlled leaks. Meanwhile, Jonathan will establish new digital identities for you and Jessica, temporary yet robust enough to evade detection temporarily. It'll buy us valuable time. Jonathan and Jessica nodded gravely. Marcus's plan offered tangible hope, a realistic strategy against Stanton's ruthless methods. Jonathan felt gratitude welling within him. Marcus's immediate, unwavering support was a lifeline in darkness. Within hours, Marcus's cybersecurity team began decrypting Stanton's files meticulously. By midnight, initial breakthroughs revealed shocking details. Offshore bank accounts, secret transactions linked to shell companies, illicit contracts involving shadowy international figures. Marcus called Jonathan and Jessica back urgently. These files are dynamite, beyond mere corporate fraud. Stanton is deeply embedded in organized crime networks, facilitating money laundering operations worth millions. You've uncovered corruption that could destabilize not just Price and Rydell, but potentially other powerful entities. Stanton's reach might extend into law enforcement, even political circles. Jonathan felt a chill at Marcus's words. Stanton's corruption surpassed anything previously imagined, implicating entities Jonathan once trusted implicitly. Jessica spoke urgently. Then releasing it openly might be dangerous without strong protective measures. Stanton won't be our only enemy. Marcus agreed solemnly. Precisely. We need broader exposure than a single journalist's story. This evidence must reach federal investigators beyond Stanton's influence. I have contacts within the Department of Justice, honest people committed to rooting out corruption. But it takes courage. This level of exposure invites significant risk. Jonathan answered firmly, unwavering. We have no other choice. Stanton has destroyed lives, corrupted institutions. If we don't expose him fully, he'll continue unchecked. Marcus nodded, determination hardening his voice. Then we move forward immediately. Prepare yourselves. Once we initiate this plan, retreat isn't an option. Over the following days, Jonathan and Jessica lived cautiously yet determinedly, hidden within Chicago's bustling anonymity. Marcus's team methodically decrypted files, carefully preparing packages of evidence for targeted leaks and high-level federal authorities. Simultaneously, Jonathan and Jessica adapted quickly to their new identities, learning meticulously crafted backstories Marcus had designed, temporary camouflage against Stanton's inevitable searches. Yet despite precautions, anxiety persisted. Jonathan knew Stanton would inevitably strike back fiercely once aware his empire teetered dangerously. Sleep was fleeting, tension relentless, but determination kept him steady. A week after their arrival, Marcus summoned Jonathan urgently, eyes blazing with intensity. "It's ready. We've securely transmitted detailed evidence directly to trusted contacts at the DOJ and FBI, simultaneously providing Kevin Hayes comprehensive documentation. By tomorrow, Stanton's empire will begin unraveling publicly." Jonathan felt hope flare brilliantly despite lingering danger. Justice, delayed yet inevitable, finally appeared attainable. Yet Marcus's expression remained grave, cautioning subtly. "But Jonathan," Marcus warned quietly, "expect retaliation immediately. Stanton won't quietly surrender. He's cornered, dangerous. Prepare accordingly." Jonathan nodded grimly. "We understand. We're ready." Marcus clasped Jonathan's shoulder firmly, respect evident. "Then let's finish what you began. Stanton chose to corrupt and deceive, but you chose courage. Hold tightly to that." Jonathan stepped back into the Chicago night, breathing deeply the crisp air. Tomorrow would unleash chaos, but within that chaos lay freedom. Freedom from shadows, corruption, fear. Stanton's world would soon collapse beneath him. Dawn broke softly over Chicago, bathing the city's towers and streets in golden hues. Yet for Jonathan and Jessica, this peaceful sunrise marked the start of a dangerous new chapter. The carefully orchestrated leaks Marcus had prepared overnight had begun to ripple outward, spreading through media outlets and law enforcement agencies with the subtle yet unstoppable momentum of an approaching storm. Jonathan sat quietly in their modest hotel room, eyes fixed on a laptop screen as news began to break across various platforms. At first, the reports were cautious, hesitant to openly name powerful figures. But by midday, the careful whispers had become loud, clear accusations. "Massive corruption scandal rocks prestigious firm Price and Rydell," read the first major headline. Within hours, Kevin Hayes had published a meticulously detailed exposé on a respected investigative journalism platform, drawing on the evidence provided by Jonathan and Jessica. The article detailed Stanton's illicit financial dealings, the laundering of tens of millions through offshore accounts, and hinted at connections to organized crime. Though Hayes carefully avoided directly naming Jonathan or Jessica, the implication was clear. Someone inside Stanton's network had exposed him. Jessica watched nervously from across the room, pale yet resolute. "This changes everything," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stanton will retaliate immediately." Jonathan nodded slowly, his expression grim. "But now he has other worries. He'll scramble to contain the damage first. This exposure is too extensive to silence quickly. His empire is fracturing." The phone buzzed suddenly. Marcus's encrypted messaging app flashed urgently. "Stay alert. Stanton's people are already mobilizing. Multiple high-level resignations at Price and Rydell. FBI confirms they're reviewing the files. Keep hidden. Things will escalate quickly now." Jonathan exhaled deeply, tension winding tighter within him. Marcus's warning was timely. Stanton was cornered but far from helpless. A man of Stanton's arrogance and ruthlessness would not accept defeat passively. He would lash out unpredictably. Hours passed anxiously as Jonathan and Jessica monitored unfolding developments. News channels filled with endless discussions, financial analysts scrambling to assess the scandal's implications. The DOJ officially announced investigations into Price and Rydell, freezing assets and seizing evidence. Stanton was now publicly named as a primary suspect, though cautiously, without immediate arrest warrants issued. It appeared even authorities tread carefully around someone as influential as Stanton. As evening fell, Jonathan received another urgent message, this time from Kevin Hayes. "Jonathan, be extremely careful. Stanton's people have identified Marcus as involved. They're aggressively tracking his communications. Stay off-grid entirely. Stanton's desperation is dangerous." Jonathan's heart sank. Marcus had been their lifeline, their protector. If Stanton discovered Marcus's full involvement, it jeopardized everything they'd worked toward. "We need to contact Marcus," Jessica urged quietly, anxiety clear in her eyes. Jonathan shook his head slowly, resisting the instinctive urge. "No, that's exactly what Stanton expects. If Marcus is compromised, Stanton's people are waiting for us to reach out. We need a safer method." Jessica hesitated, frustration mixed with fear. "Then what's our next step? We can't just wait here indefinitely." Jonathan paced restlessly, thoughts spinning rapidly. "Stanton expects panic, reaction. But we still have one significant advantage. He underestimates our resilience. Stanton knows our identities, but our location in Chicago remains relatively secure. We need to leverage that." Jessica watched him carefully, eyes searching his expression for reassurance. How? Jonathan took a steadying breath. We contact the FBI ourselves, directly. Marcus provided us with reliable federal contacts. If Stanton expects us to remain hidden, we do the opposite. Approach authorities directly, presenting ourselves as key whistleblowers. Jessica's eyes widened briefly, considering carefully. That's risky. Stanton likely has informants even within law enforcement. Jonathan acknowledged the risk calmly. True, but the alternative is staying passive, vulnerable. We need official federal protection. Once we establish ourselves officially as cooperating witnesses, Stanton's leverage diminishes. Jessica nodded slowly, recognizing Jonathan's logic despite understandable fear. Then let's act immediately, while Stanton scrambles. Jonathan quickly retrieved the secure contact details Marcus had previously provided. A high-ranking FBI agent, David Hollister, known widely for integrity and efficiency. Jonathan dialed carefully, pulse quickening as the call connected swiftly. "This is Special Agent Hollister," came the cautious voice on the line. Jonathan spoke clearly yet guardedly, heart racing slightly. "Agent Hollister, my name is Jonathan Clarke. I've been framed by Michael Stanton and have evidence against him. Jessica Lange and I provided recent leaks exposing his criminal network. We're ready to cooperate officially, but we need protection immediately." There was a pause, brief yet filled with critical assessment. Then Hollister responded decisively, recognizing Jonathan's significance immediately. "Your timing is critical, Mr. Clarke. We know who you are. Stanton is under active investigation, but he's powerful. Where are you?" Jonathan cautiously provided their hotel location, requesting discreet and immediate federal protection. Hollister assured him agents would arrive swiftly, instructing them to stay inside, doors secured, prepared to move immediately once the team arrived. The waiting was agonizing. Every sound from the corridor amplified anxiety. Jessica sat stiffly on the couch, her expression tense yet determined. Jonathan stood near the door, listening carefully, pulse racing with each passing minute. Suddenly, sharp knocking jolted them, a commanding voice announcing, "FBI, open carefully, hands visible." Jonathan cautiously opened the door, hands raised instinctively. 2 FBI agents entered swiftly, weapons lowered but vigilant, immediately securing the room. "Jonathan Clarke, Jessica Lange," the lead agent addressed firmly. "I'm Agent Victor Reynolds. Special Agent Hollister sent us. We're extracting you immediately. Stanton's associates are already nearby. Surveillance indicates imminent threat." Jonathan and Jessica exchanged worried yet grateful glances, hastily gathering essentials. Moments later, escorted swiftly by the FBI agents, they exited quietly through a rear service entrance, vehicles waiting discreetly behind the building. Jonathan's senses heightened instinctively as they moved quickly, expecting threats at every turn. Within minutes, safely secured in an FBI safe house on Chicago's outskirts, Jonathan exhaled deeply, adrenaline subsiding slowly. Agent Reynolds secured doors, windows, and electronic signals meticulously, ensuring absolute security. "You're safe for now," Reynolds assured firmly. "Your cooperation is crucial. Stanton's criminal activities implicate powerful figures beyond Price and Rydell. Your testimony, combined with decrypted evidence, can dismantle an extensive criminal network." Jonathan nodded gravely, fully grasping the gravity of their situation. Stanton's web of corruption extended deeper and wider than imagined, entrenched within financial systems, law enforcement, perhaps even political structures. Fighting back required courage, sacrifice, resilience. Jessica spoke quietly yet resolutely, voice steady despite exhaustion. "We're ready to cooperate fully. Stanton's corruption must end." Reynolds' expression softened briefly, respect evident. "Then your courage might just change everything. But know this, Stanton will fight fiercely now. Prepare yourselves. The hardest part still awaits." Jonathan stood resolutely, strength rising from within despite daunting challenges ahead. His life, once quietly ordered, had unraveled dramatically, but clarity replaced confusion now. Fighting corruption, reclaiming integrity, confronting powerful evils required unwavering resolve, and Jonathan was ready. Michael Stanton's empire teetered dangerously, exposed and vulnerable. Jonathan knew retaliation was inevitable, but fear no longer ruled him. Justice was within reach, and he would pursue it relentlessly, whatever the cost. The FBI safe house stood isolated on Chicago's outskirts, hidden behind rows of aging trees and concealed beneath the quiet anonymity of a suburban street. Yet despite the layers of security, Jonathan felt vulnerable, acutely aware of Michael Stanton's relentless reach. Inside the modest, sparsely furnished living room, Jonathan and Jessica awaited the FBI's next move with anxious anticipation. Days passed in cautious solitude. FBI agents guarded them around the clock, their presence a constant reminder of the peril outside. Information trickled in slowly. Stanton's empire was unraveling rapidly under intense scrutiny from federal investigations and relentless media exposure. Yet Jonathan understood clearly. Stanton wouldn't quietly surrender. His desperation made him more dangerous than ever. Agent Reynolds updated Jonathan regularly, detailing the cascading fallout. High-profile resignations at Price and Rydell, internal finger-pointing, FBI raids on Stanton's personal residences, and asset seizures extending overseas. Stanton's associates were fleeing or cutting deals, each eager to avoid prosecution by providing information against their once-feared leader. Yet Stanton himself remained elusive, evading arrest warrants with disturbing ease, protected by his considerable resources and influential connections. His silence felt ominous to Jonathan, like the calm before a violent storm. Late one evening, Agent Reynolds summoned Jonathan and Jessica to a secured briefing room in the basement, carefully insulated from any electronic surveillance. Reynolds sat at a small conference table, flanked by Special Agent Hollister, serious, determined, focused entirely on dismantling Stanton's criminal network. "Jonathan, Jessica," Hollister began gravely, "you've both done remarkably well under extraordinary circumstances. Your bravery exposed a vast criminal network, implicating individuals previously considered untouchable." Jonathan shifted uncomfortably, feeling little satisfaction, only heavy responsibility. "But Stanton remains free." Hollister nodded solemnly. "True, Stanton's resources and allies still protect him, but his network is breaking rapidly. We've recovered extensive evidence thanks to your cooperation. His ability to maneuver is severely compromised." Jessica interjected softly, anxiety coloring her voice. "So what happens next?" Hollister leaned forward intently. "We believe Stanton will attempt to retaliate soon. He's desperate, dangerously so. But desperation often breeds mistakes. We're preparing a trap, a controlled operation designed to lure Stanton out, forcing him into direct action." Jonathan tensed instinctively. "What kind of trap?" Reynolds explained carefully. "Stanton has repeatedly tried to track you both, especially Jessica. His priority is silencing witnesses. If we leak false information that Jessica intends to publicly testify against him soon, Stanton will likely attempt direct action." Jessica's expression darkened fearfully, understandably concerned. "You mean use me as bait?" Reynolds softened his voice slightly. "Under controlled circumstances. You won't be in actual danger. Extensive protection measures will be deployed. But Stanton must believe the opportunity is genuine." Jonathan interjected protectively. "That's a huge risk. Stanton's desperate. He won't hesitate to harm her." Hollister reassured calmly yet firmly. "We understand your concern, Jonathan, but this is our best chance. Stanton is meticulous but arrogant. If he senses a final opportunity slipping away, he'll react rashly. That moment provides our strongest chance at capture." Jessica hesitated, deeply troubled yet recognizing truth. Finally, she spoke resolutely, voice shaking slightly but determined. "All right, if this stops Stanton once and for all, I'll do it." Jonathan felt deep respect and apprehension simultaneously. Jessica's courage had repeatedly amazed him, yet this move filled him with profound anxiety. He grasped Jessica's hand briefly, silently pledging support, determined never to abandon her side. Preparations commenced swiftly. Over the following days, FBI surveillance leaked strategic false information through controlled channels. Carefully crafted rumors implying Jessica was planning a high-profile press conference, where she would publicly detail Stanton's corruption and implicate even more prominent figures. It was an irresistible provocation Stanton could not afford to ignore. As expected, the response came quickly. Intercepted communications indicated Stanton's mounting desperation, his network frantic, scrambling to locate Jessica's supposed conference location. FBI intelligence tracked increased activity among Stanton's remaining operatives, individuals now acting more openly and recklessly as their leader's control weakened. The trap was set at an upscale Chicago hotel, chosen specifically for ease of security management, with numerous FBI agents placed discreetly throughout surrounding buildings and streets. Jessica, carefully coached, prepared to appear publicly, though her actual presence at the podium was meticulously staged. Jonathan remained close by, tension winding tighter as the event approached. His role was limited to observing safely from a secured FBI command center nearby. Screens displayed multiple surveillance feeds, providing real-time intelligence across hotel corridors, entrances, streets. He could see Jessica clearly, poised, steady, quietly courageous despite immense personal risk. Minutes ticked toward Jessica's scheduled appearance. Tension thickened palpably in the command room. FBI agents monitored closely, expecting Stanton's operatives at any moment. Finally, intelligence intercepted rapid movement. Known associates of Stanton approaching cautiously through back corridors and stairwells, avoiding obvious routes but failing to escape surveillance entirely. Agent Hollister's voice crackled urgently through radios. "Hold positions. Suspects identified. Let them approach. We need direct proof linking Stanton." Jonathan watched anxiously, heart pounding fiercely. Stanton's operatives moved swiftly, quietly infiltrating through maintenance corridors toward Jessica's supposed location backstage. FBI agents shadowed carefully, awaiting precise authorization. Suddenly, Hollister's voice barked sharply through radios, tense yet controlled. "Move in now. Suspects have weapons. Secure immediately." Instantly, FBI teams converged swiftly, arresting Stanton's operatives without resistance. Jonathan exhaled sharply, relief briefly flooding him until Reynolds suddenly alerted urgently. "Wait, we've lost visual on Stanton himself. He's nearby, unaccounted for." Panic flared rapidly within Jonathan. Stanton himself had risked personal involvement, unexpected, reckless, terrifying. FBI agents scrambled urgently, combing the hotel systematically, anxiety mounting. Suddenly, an alarm flashed urgently. Jonathan glimpsed Stanton briefly, moving swiftly through a side entrance toward Jessica's backstage location, his expression desperate yet determined. "Jessica!" Jonathan shouted instinctively, fear surging violently. Agent Reynolds swiftly radioed emergency protocols, agents racing rapidly to intercept. Jonathan dashed impulsively toward Jessica's location, ignoring protests from FBI personnel. He burst backstage, adrenaline surging fiercely, desperation propelling him forward just as Stanton appeared suddenly, confronting Jessica directly. Eyes cold, ruthless, pistol drawn, aiming steadily. "Jessica, stop!" Jonathan shouted desperately, freezing Stanton momentarily. Stanton turned sharply, surprised briefly by Jonathan's unexpected presence. His voice came coldly, arrogance still evident despite defeat looming clearly. "Jonathan, always interfering. You could have walked away." Jonathan stared defiantly, voice shaking but fierce. "No, Stanton, you destroyed lives. Innocent people ruined for your greed. It ends now." Stanton's expression twisted bitterly, desperation finally overcoming arrogant composure. "You're naive, Jonathan. Everyone's corruptible, even you. Idealism achieves nothing." Jonathan shook his head resolutely. "You're wrong. Justice matters. Truth matters. You chose corruption. I choose integrity. And I won't let you hurt Jessica." Stanton's finger tightened dangerously on the trigger, eyes narrowing viciously. Just as FBI agents burst urgently through surrounding doors, weapons trained instantly. "Drop your weapon now!" Agent Reynolds commanded sharply, authority uncompromising. Stanton's eyes darted wildly, briefly considering defiance before bitterly acknowledging defeat. His weapon dropped loudly, surrender bitter yet inevitable. Agents swiftly restrained Stanton, removing him decisively. Jonathan immediately embraced Jessica tightly, relief overwhelming both completely. "You risked everything," Jessica whispered gratefully, tears streaming openly now. Jonathan held her firmly, voice gentle yet unwavering. "We both did. But it's over now. Stanton's finally finished." Outside, dawn emerged quietly over Chicago, golden rays gently illuminating city streets. Justice had triumphed. Integrity endured despite corruption's ruthless assault. Yet Jonathan knew clearly, victory had come at tremendous cost. Innocence lost, trust tested profoundly. But courage, truth, integrity, these endured fiercely, reaffirmed irrevocably through trials faced boldly. And Jonathan vowed silently never to surrender these values again. In the aftermath of Michael Stanton's dramatic capture, Chicago awoke to a city forever changed. News channels replayed the scene relentlessly. The once powerful Stanton escorted in handcuffs, his face devoid of the arrogance and poise that once defined him. The symbol was powerful, resonating beyond Price and Rydell LLP and sending ripples through the corridors of corporate America. Jonathan and Jessica, now safely returned to protective custody, watched silently from the FBI safehouse. Despite the victory, neither could fully celebrate. The cost had been steep. Friendships betrayed, reputations damaged, innocence shattered. Stanton's arrest was a milestone, yet the scars left behind remained deep and painful. Days stretched into weeks as the FBI meticulously built their case against Stanton, systematically dismantling his extensive criminal network. FBI Special Agent Reynolds regularly updated Jonathan and Jessica, detailing how Stanton's former allies quickly turned against him, providing authorities with further incriminating evidence. High-ranking executives, once loyal to Stanton, sought plea deals in exchange for reduced sentences, each testimony a dagger weakening Stanton's remaining influence. Yet Jonathan understood justice was more complex than merely punishing one man. Stanton's corruption had exposed flaws deeply embedded within corporate structures and institutions, highlighting vulnerabilities exploited easily by those driven solely by greed. True justice required systemic change, accountability, transparency, principles Jonathan had always valued but now felt compelled to champion actively. Jonathan and Jessica, now key witnesses in one of the most high-profile corporate fraud cases in decades, cooperated fully with federal prosecutors. Each provided extensive testimony, meticulously detailing Stanton's schemes, transactions, and manipulations. Jessica's insider knowledge of Stanton's personal communications and covert dealings proved invaluable, while Jonathan's precise understanding of accounting systems provided critical context, illuminating precisely how Stanton's corruption operated. Beneath carefully maintained illusions of legitimacy, media attention intensified rapidly. Jonathan became reluctant yet determinedly outspoken, aware his experience offered an essential cautionary tale about corporate corruption's devastating consequences. Interviews highlighted not only Stanton's guilt, but systemic failures enabling such corruption to flourish unchecked. Jonathan spoke openly about betrayal, integrity's importance, and corporate accountability's necessity, messages that resonated deeply across diverse audiences, sparking broader public debates. Despite public acclaim, Jonathan privately grappled with unresolved emotions. Stanton's arrest provided legal justice but failed to erase lingering trauma from betrayal by those he'd trusted implicitly, especially Sarah Crawford. Jonathan remained deeply conflicted, unsure whether to forgive Sarah or permanently sever their once close friendship. Her betrayal cut deepest precisely because it had exploited genuine trust built over years, leaving emotional wounds slow to heal. Jonathan eventually learned through Agent Reynolds that Sarah, although initially implicated due to complicity under Stanton's coercion, had fully cooperated with federal authorities. Sarah provided substantial assistance, willingly risking retaliation by Stanton's allies to ensure authorities dismantled Stanton's entire network. Jonathan recognized courage within Sarah's eventual actions, prompting difficult introspection about forgiveness, redemption, and humanity's complexity amid moral failures. Late one afternoon, Jonathan received an unexpected phone call. Sarah herself, now freed conditionally pending sentencing recommendations due to her critical cooperation with investigators. "Jonathan." Sarah's voice trembled slightly, carrying profound regret, yet quiet courage. "I know I have no right to call, but I needed you to hear directly how profoundly sorry I am. Stanton manipulated my deepest fears, exploiting my brother's debts cruelly, but it doesn't excuse my actions." Jonathan listened silently, emotions conflicting violently within him, anger mingling uncomfortably with compassion, betrayal juxtaposed, painfully against understanding. Sarah continued carefully, sincerity evident. "I betrayed you, violated trust unforgivably. But please understand, regret consumes me constantly. I'll accept whatever consequences come willingly. I just needed you to know your friendship mattered deeply, even though my actions didn't reflect that." Jonathan finally responded quietly, pain audible yet controlled carefully. "Sarah, your betrayal devastated me. It still hurts deeply. But I understand now Stanton's cruelty, his ruthless manipulations. I don't forgive easily, but I see clearly your actions weren't solely selfish. They were desperate, fearful." Sarah exhaled shakily, gratitude mingling with sorrow. "I deserve nothing more, but knowing you don't entirely hate me means more than you realize. Thank you." Jonathan ended the call quietly, emotions profoundly unsettled yet undeniably lighter. Sarah's remorse felt genuine, prompting difficult questions. Could forgiveness coexist with accountability? Was redemption genuinely possible despite profound moral failures? Jessica, sensing Jonathan's turmoil, gently approached. "Are you all right?" Jonathan hesitated thoughtfully. "Not entirely, but perhaps I will be eventually. Sarah's betrayal taught harsh lessons about trust's fragility. Yet I've learned compassion must coexist alongside accountability. Sarah made terrible choices, but she also displayed genuine remorse, courage afterward. Justice demands accountability, but humanity demands compassion." Jessica nodded gently, understanding profoundly. "You're stronger because you've faced betrayal without becoming cynical. Stanton's cruelty failed precisely because integrity matters deeply, not simply punishing wrong but embracing principles fully." Months later, Jonathan testified publicly during Stanton's highly publicized trial. His calm, authoritative testimony, meticulously detailing Stanton's financial schemes, backed firmly by decrypted evidence and Jessica's courageous corroboration. Stanton sat silently, expressionless throughout, his once imposing presence diminished completely. Ultimately, Michael Stanton received multiple sentences totaling decades in federal prison. Justice delivered decisively. Stanton's empire collapsed entirely, sending an unmistakable warning to other corporate criminals tempted similarly. Yet Jonathan understood clearly that justice's deeper significance transcended Stanton's personal fate. Systemic reforms emerged rapidly. Legislative initiatives enforcing stricter corporate transparency, accountability standards tightened significantly. Whistleblower protections strengthened profoundly due directly to Jonathan's highly visible advocacy. Jonathan returned briefly to Price and Rydell, invited personally by new leadership committed openly to reforming company culture fundamentally. Though reluctant initially, Jonathan's presence symbolized redemption, acknowledging profound wrongs yet actively embracing meaningful change. Employees welcomed Jonathan warmly, many expressing deep gratitude openly, inspired profoundly by Jonathan's courage confronting corruption openly, refusing silent complicity despite significant personal risk. Jessica chose a different path entirely, eschewing corporate environments entirely, channeling her trauma positively through advocacy organizations supporting whistleblowers facing retaliation, providing critical emotional and practical assistance. Jessica became an influential public voice highlighting whistleblower protection's necessity, directly influencing significant legislative reforms nationwide. Jonathan's path diverged significantly, yet remained equally meaningful. He established a respected consultancy dedicated explicitly to corporate ethics, transparency, integrity training programs actively embraced enthusiastically across numerous corporations genuinely committed openly to preventing corruption proactively. Jonathan's story became powerful inspiration directly motivating countless individuals and companies alike toward higher ethical standards, creating lasting change exceeding Stanton's specific corruption scandal significantly. Jonathan and Jessica remained close friends, bound irrevocably through shared experiences confronting corruption's harsh realities directly. Yet neither allowed bitterness or cynicism dominance, instead channeling trauma constructively through relentless advocacy, determined always toward meaningful systemic change. Their paths, though diverging slightly, remained parallel, each reinforcing tirelessly that integrity mattered profoundly despite corruption's persistent temptations. Years later, Jonathan reflected quietly upon lessons learned profoundly throughout this painful journey. Betrayal, corruption, trauma. These experiences tested profoundly yet ultimately reinforced integrity's unwavering importance. Compassion and accountability, Jonathan understood clearly, were never mutually exclusive concepts. True justice embraced both simultaneously, demanding courage confronting moral failures openly, yet always recognizing humanity's profound complexities, gently. Jonathan's once quiet life had irrevocably transformed dramatically, yet he embraced fully newfound purpose advocating tirelessly for transparency, integrity, justice. Michael Stanton's corruption inadvertently awakened Jonathan profoundly, transforming painful betrayal constructively into relentless advocacy toward genuine systemic change. Integrity endured fiercely despite corruption's cruel assault. Justice resonated powerfully, echoing permanently through Jonathan's relentless advocacy, permanently reshaping corporate America's ethical landscape decisively, enduring profoundly beyond Stanton's specific crimes. 10 years after Michael Stanton's dramatic downfall, Jonathan Clarke stood silently at the expansive windows of his office, overlooking the vibrant streets of downtown Chicago. Morning sunlight bathed skyscrapers in warm, golden hues, a comforting reminder that darkness could be temporary, corruption fleeting, and integrity enduring. Jonathan's life had transformed profoundly from the quiet accountant falsely accused of theft. Today, at 44, he was a respected figure in corporate ethics, consulting corporations nationwide on transparency and accountability. His firm, Clarke Integrity Solutions, had become a symbol of redemption, a powerful legacy born from betrayal and injustice. Yet Jonathan's journey toward healing had been anything but straightforward. The emotional scars inflicted by Stanton's ruthless manipulations and Sarah Crawford's painful betrayal lingered deeply. Jonathan had learned the profound truth that trust, once shattered, could be rebuilt, but only slowly, painstakingly, and never without caution. Today felt significant. Jonathan checked his watch and sighed quietly, gathering his thoughts. He was meeting someone he hadn't seen in over 10 years, Sarah Crawford. After serving probation and community service for her role in Stanton's schemes, Sarah had quietly rebuilt her life away from corporate pressures. She'd spent the past decade advocating for mental health awareness and working with communities impacted by addiction, her brother's struggles having ultimately reshaped her priorities profoundly. Jonathan felt nervousness creeping subtly beneath his calm exterior as he arrived at the cafe where they'd agreed to meet. The quaint coffee shop was nestled in a peaceful Chicago neighborhood, far removed from their turbulent past yet oddly fitting for a reunion so deeply marked by complexity and regret. Sarah was already seated, her appearance noticeably changed, softer, calmer, yet carrying an unmistakable depth shaped by years of quiet introspection and genuine remorse. She rose carefully, meeting Jonathan's gaze cautiously yet warmly. "Jonathan," she greeted quietly, sincere gratitude coloring her voice deeply. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." Jonathan nodded gently, his expression thoughtful yet open. "Neither was I, honestly. But closure felt necessary, Sarah. It's been too long." They ordered coffee, tension slowly easing into cautious comfort as each studied the other carefully, reflecting on changes wrought profoundly over years spent apart. Sarah finally broke the silence, sincerity evident in every word. "Jonathan, there isn't a single day that passes without regret over what I did. Betraying your trust, compromising my values. I know forgiveness is a complex thing, but I genuinely hope someday you'll find peace knowing how profoundly sorry I am." Jonathan took a slow breath, choosing his words carefully. "Sarah, I spent years wondering whether forgiveness was even possible after betrayal so deep. But over time I realized forgiveness isn't just about absolving someone else. It's about freeing myself from bitterness. You've lived genuinely since your mistake. You've owned your actions fully, sought redemption honestly. I respect that more than you realize." Relief visibly washed over Sarah, tears forming quietly yet gratefully in her eyes. "Hearing that means more than you could possibly imagine. I've dedicated my life to ensuring no one else feels as trapped and hopeless as I did then." Jonathan smiled softly, understanding Sarah's sincerity clearly. "You've done good work, work that matters deeply. Your actions back then hurt profoundly, but who you've become since speaks volumes about redemption's genuine possibility." Their conversation gradually shifted, tension dissipating completely into genuine warmth and cautious optimism. Jonathan shared openly about his advocacy, ethics consulting, efforts promoting transparency and accountability actively across corporate America. Sarah listened intently, clearly proud of Jonathan's impactful journey and profound influence reshaping corporate cultures positively. Hours passed gently, conversation meandering thoughtfully between past regrets, present accomplishments, and future hopes. Before parting ways, Sarah hesitated briefly, quietly vulnerable yet hopeful. "Jonathan, despite everything, despite profound mistakes, I genuinely hope someday we can be friends again. Not like before, too much has changed profoundly, but a different kind of friendship, born honestly from healing, accountability, and understanding." Jonathan paused thoughtfully, reflecting deeply upon Sarah's hopeful request. Finally, he answered gently yet sincerely, "I think we've already begun exactly that. A different friendship, rooted firmly in honesty and compassion despite painful lessons learned profoundly. Trust will rebuild slowly, cautiously, but I genuinely believe we'll reach that point fully." Sarah smiled gratefully, relief evident profoundly within her expression. Their reunion had not simply been about forgiveness or closure. It was about redemption's profound complexity, humanity's enduring capacity for renewal despite profound moral failures. Jonathan walked away thoughtfully, reflecting quietly upon powerful lessons learned profoundly through betrayal and injustice. Trust shattered could heal carefully. Integrity challenged fiercely could emerge strengthened significantly, and justice, though complex, remained profoundly worth relentless pursuit. Returning to his office, Jonathan felt introspective yet deeply peaceful. His consultancy thrived powerfully, profoundly influencing corporate cultures nationwide toward accountability and transparency. Yet Jonathan's most significant accomplishment transcended professional success. It was personal redemption, emotional healing profoundly embraced despite trauma faced bravely. That evening, Jonathan attended a prestigious ceremony recognizing leaders dedicated genuinely toward corporate integrity nationwide. Approaching the podium, applause warmly acknowledging Jonathan's relentless advocacy profoundly, he addressed attendees thoughtfully. "Integrity matters profoundly, not merely because corruption hurts financially, but because it erodes humanity itself. My journey taught painful yet invaluable lessons. Betrayal tests integrity's strength profoundly. Injustice demands courage, confronting corruption openly. Redemption requires compassion alongside accountability simultaneously. Corporate integrity isn't simply ethics, It reflects deeply upon who we choose actively to become. Applause thundered warmly, resonating powerfully throughout the room, filled entirely with influential leaders profoundly inspired significantly by Jonathan's impactful advocacy. Proof Integrity's resilience endured fiercely despite ruthless corruption tested painfully firsthand. Late that night, returning quietly home beneath Chicago's luminous skyline glittering gently beneath stars twinkling subtly overhead, Jonathan reflected quietly upon life's unpredictable journey, profoundly reshaped dramatically over 10 turbulent years marked powerfully by profound betrayals, courageous resilience, tireless advocacy toward integrity's enduring importance significantly. Jonathan's journey taught profoundly enduring truths. Betrayal, though devastating, needn't define permanently. Corruption, though powerful temporarily, inevitably failed confronting courage, openly embracing integrity decisively. Redemption, though complex profoundly, remained humanity's most hopeful promise genuinely possible despite profound moral failures actively faced honestly. Jonathan understood clearly integrity's genuine significance extended profoundly beyond professional accomplishments. It shaped fundamentally who humanity chose actively becoming, especially confronting injustice courageously, yet compassionately. Simultaneously, integrity, Jonathan reflected thoughtfully beneath Chicago's gentle nighttime calm, mattered profoundly because it illuminated clearly humanity's best possibilities, despite powerful darkness confronted courageously, yet compassionately. Integrity's enduring echo resonating profoundly through Jonathan's relentless advocacy toward corporate transparency, accountability, justice. Jonathan Clarke had emerged profoundly stronger through corruption tested fiercely, betrayal faced bravely, his legacy permanently defined powerfully not by injustice experienced tragically, but by integrity championed relentlessly, compassion embraced fully, redemption achieved profoundly. His journey had begun quietly, marked by meticulous routines defined carefully, yet profoundly transformed dramatically by corruption's ruthless cruelty, confronted courageously yet compassionately. Integrity tested profoundly, yet emerged undeniably, strengthened. Justice pursued tirelessly, yet achieved meaningfully. Redemption embraced fully, yet compassionately. Integrity had triumphed decisively, its powerful echoes resonating permanently, inspiring profoundly enduring change, actively shaping corporate America fundamentally toward transparency genuinely, accountability meaningfully, compassion powerfully. Jonathan had faced betrayal courageously, yet compassionately, proving powerfully that integrity's true strength lay profoundly within humanity's relentless capacity actively confronting corruption openly, seeking redemption genuinely, embracing compassion decisively. Integrity had endured powerfully, resonating clearly through Jonathan Clarke's profoundly transformed life, its powerful echoes permanently reshaping corporate ethics genuinely, humanity compassionately, justice decisively. And Jonathan knew profoundly. Integrity mattered, not merely because corruption hurt financially, but because humanity itself depended profoundly upon integrity, courageously championed relentlessly, compassion embraced fully, redemption pursued, genuinely. Integrity endured powerfully. Jonathan Clarke's profound legacy resonating permanently, inspiring humanity powerfully toward justice decisively, compassion genuinely, redemption meaningfully.